සිංහලේ අඩුම මිලකට රුපියල් 160යි.
Tonight, ignorance. Health and safety guidelines forgotten as people throng establishments following the easing of travel restrictions. Unconfirmed. Questions remain over the suspected Delta variant infection in Corte.
This has not been confirmed to the epidemiology unit.
Worst in the world. The UN expert team deduces only 40% of plastic pellets washed ashore in the Express Pearl disaster. Doom and gloom. A UN report says that Sri Lanka's FDI inflows will take longer to recover as investment commitments remain weak. All that and much more coming up on First at 9. This Monday, the 21st of June, 2021.
ඒ කියන්නේ ලයිෆ් බෝයි අවස්ථා 10කදී ලෙඩ රෝග 10කට හේතු වන වෛරස් ඇතුළු විෂ පිෂවලට එරෙහිව සටන් කරනවා කියලා.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammik Eknagar. After being cooped up in houses for several weeks, people took the maximum opportunity to venture out. Maybe more so than they should have after the travel restrictions were eased this morning. Looking at the number of people out and about, it was difficult to deduce that Sri Lanka is grappling with a deadly pandemic. There, however, were grievances as well, with private sector employees upset with the government for not providing adequate transportation facilities. Vegetable vendors, meanwhile, moaned that prices were too high.
The month-long restriction on public movements which prevailed across the entire island was lifted for 3 days with effect from 4 a.m. today. However, 29 Grama Niladari divisions across 12 districts identified as high-risk areas went into a state of isolation at 4 this morning until further notice. As the day broke, roads in Colombo looked excruciatingly similar to pre-pandemic days as there were a large influx of vehicles to the city, resulting in heavy traffic congestion. However, adjoining areas of the usually busy Peta did not witness large crowds today. With public transport services in the Western Province only limited to essential services and office staff, the general public complained about a significant delay in reporting to work as a result of inadequate transport facilities. The transportation woes extended to train commuters as well, despite the Department of Railways increasing the number of journeys commencing from the Fort Railway Station, operating within the provincial limits to 23. Private sector employees in particular were disgruntled for being overlooked when providing transport services. In such a backdrop, more guidelines have been issued by the Director General of Health Services, this time targeting government, semi-government and private sector institutions in a bid to address the overcrowding streets. Heads of all government and semi-government institutions falling under essential services are instructed to call only the essential cadre for work. As for government and semi-government institutions not falling under essential services, any official can only be called to work for 2 days of the week. That too has to be done if the employee's duty cannot be fulfilled from home. Since transportation services are limited to essential services, employees called to work should be provided with necessary transportation facilities in line with health guidelines. In case of the private sector, institutional heads are instructed to call the minimum cadre to work. However, working from home should be encouraged. Meanwhile, the Department of Excise yesterday granted permission for wine stores with retail license FL4 and those with beer, ale, stout and wine license for retail sale FL22A to open for business during the 3 days of relaxed movement restrictions. After weeks of not having access to liquor, it was no surprise that long queues were formed at outlets permitted to sell liquor. Similarly, long queues were seen outside shops, banks and other financial institutions as well, including pawning centres. Meanwhile, the situation outside Colombo wasn't much different. People thronged towns with no regard for health and safety guidelines. The people's behaviour as a whole drew criticism from President of the Public Health Inspectors Union, Upul Rohana. He warned that continuation of this ignorant behaviour will see the pandemic situation escalate once more in a couple of weeks' time. Rohana also urged people to keep in mind that the deadly Delta variant of COVID-19 is also in the community at present when they mix in society. In the meantime, all economic centres in the island were open today as well. The prices of the produce, however, were little changed as traders complained of inflated prices along with a shortage of produce. They also voiced their difficulties in selling produce forced to purchase at high prices at even greater prices to consumers. The Paliaguda fish market too was open for trade this morning. The police meanwhile continued to apprehend people acting in defiance of quarantine rules and regulations, with over 800 people taken into custody during the last 24-hour cycle. Among them are the chairman of the Talawakale-Lindula Urban Council and 6 others who were arrested for organising a function in Talawakale yesterday in violation of quarantine laws. This brings the total arrest made by police since the 30th of October last year for similar offences to 41,580.
මේ වසංගතයෙන් ඇතිවන දුෂ්කර අභියෝග නිසා නිවස වගේම වැඩ කරන තැනත් කරදරයක් වගේ දැනෙන්න පුළුවන්. ආරක්ෂිත සහ විවෘත සේවා ස්ථානයක් සඳහා එකිනෙකාට සහාය වෙමු.
Now, there were concerns today following reports of a deadly Delta variant of COVID-19 being detected from the area of Sri Jayawardhanapura. Fears would have been reasonable given the devastation the strand caused in neighbouring India. But health authorities later gave reason to pause those fears, saying the involvement of the Delta variant, first detected in India, is yet to be confirmed.
Sri Lanka's COVID-19 situation currently is at a very decisive stage, as the country now begins to reap the fruits of its COVID prevention measures put in place to combat the third wave. Over the last 5 days, the daily caseload has been on a gradual decline. On the 16th last week, the caseload stood at 2,436. And yesterday it was 2028. Given the trend, it is a cruel development that the Delta variant of the virus, which originated in India, was discovered from the community last week. 5 out of 9 samples randomly collected from the Arame Road in Dematagoda produced positive results. The World Health Organization has also confirmed that the Delta variant is the more dominant variant at present. In any case, concerns peaked over the Delta variant spread in the island once more today, with reports of a person in the area of Pragatipura in Sri Jayawardhanapura Kotte being infected with the deadly strand.
There has been reports related to the reporting of one case of Delta variant from the Pitakotte Nugegoda area. However, this has not been confirmed to the epidemiology unit up to now. But we know that this confirmation will take time. But most of the time, laboratories who detect or who get a clue of such variation usually inform the MOH of the area, and they will be taking the proper actions immediately after receiving such news. So at this moment, whatever the action that have been taken at these areas are as a result of such activity or such action. So therefore, what is required to tell that these new variants are really dangerous and their transmissibility is high, but they are transmitted at a higher rate only if the normal transmission routes are intact. If we don't adhere to these guidelines, only this variant will spread at a higher speed. So therefore, we would like to urge the public that what we need to do is to adhere to the health guidelines, so this variant or any other variant will not be spreading as expected.
Following this development, health authorities took measures to conduct PCR tests on 34 persons residing in the area of Pragatipura today. Meanwhile, yesterday the health authorities isolated the area of Dematagoda with the 5 Delta infections of persons along the Arame Road in mind. Touching on the matter today, Chief Medical Officer of the Colombo Municipal Council, Dr. Ruwan Vijayamuni, said all residents along the Aramay Road will be subjected to exit PCR tests or rapid antigen tests in 11 days. He added that if the rate of infection among the road's residents is below 5%, the area of Dematakoda will be brought out of isolation. In the meantime, from yesterday's caseload of 2,028, bulk of the infections were reported from the Western Province. The district of Gampa confirmed 307 cases, Colombo confirmed 302, and Kalutara reported 253 new cases. With all 25 districts recording new infections, the Mullaitivu district confirmed the least with just one. There were 20 imported cases too among yesterday's caseload. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka's caseload today stands at 2,104 so far, taking the overall tally to 31,919. On the vaccination front, the first and second doses of the Sinopharm vaccine was administered to 11,218 persons yesterday. The first dose of the Sputnik vaccine was also administered to 14,983 persons, while 252 people were given the second dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine. After passing the 200,000 mark yesterday, the island saw a further 1,998 COVID recoveries today, taking the overall tally to 207,287.
Sri Lanka Retailers Association has made an appeal from both the government as well as from the leasers and landlords to support its members during the pandemic. Among their requests are also loan repayment concessions as well as utility and trade levies.
The Sri Lanka Retailers Association has called on landlords, lessors and business partners to reduce leases and rentals for the association's members. The entity appeals that lessors and landlords provide a 50% concession on rentals and leases for the next 6 months on properties leased and rented by SLRA members. In a communique, SLRA says that many retailers are suffering losses due to the prevailing situation in the country caused by COVID-19 and that the current impact supersedes the previous lockdowns in terms of the effect on retail businesses. It goes on to say that the pandemic and the resultant lockdown have substantially reduced retailers' operability, given the higher costs drastically reduced revenues and cash flows, resulting in large losses causing a significant dent in their ability to operate efficiently, with some even struggling to stay afloat. While acknowledging the impact of concession on rentals and leases would have on the lessors and landlords, the Sri Lanka Retailers Association, however, notes that the industry needs to stay afloat for all parties to benefit in the future, and therefore it is their belief that collective action is the way forward. Further, the association appeals to authorities to consider special relief on loan repayments and other concessions on utility and trade levies, especially for smaller retailers, given the unprecedented externalities inhibiting regular business. It also highlights that retail accounts for over 1/3 of the GDP and over 15% of the employment in Sri Lanka.
We will see you on the other side of this break. Bear with us.
ගෙදරකට තේ හදනවා කියන්නේ වෙනම වැඩක්. මැලිබන් තේ ගෙදර පදමට තේ.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, State Minister of Coast Conservation Dr. Nalaka Godeheva says that the UN team of experts who are in the country to assess the environmental damage caused by the Express Pearl disaster has marked the plastic pollution caused by the incident as the worst in the world. Now, this was revealed during a media briefing conducted today.
A team of experts from the United Nations Environment Programme provided by the EU recently visited Sri Lanka to assess the damage caused by the Express Pearl disaster. The team had visited the area of the incident and had observed the sunken vessel and the marine environment. As such, the Cabinet Subcommittee appointed to assess the damage caused by the ship met this morning. Following the conclusion of the discussion, the committee members called a media briefing.
ඔවුන් කියනවා දැන් මේ නැවේ තිබිච්ච රසායනික ද්‍රව්‍ය වලින් නම් වැඩි හරියක් මේ වෙන විට ගිනිගෙන වායුවට එකතු වෙලා තියෙනවා විය හැකි. ඒ නිසා ඒ රසායනික ද්‍රව්‍ය වලින් තවදුරටත් හානිකර සැකකටයුතු කන්ටේනර්ස් එකක් දෙකක් පමණ තිබෙනවා. ඒ වල තත්ත්වය තමයි අපි නිරීක්ෂණය කරන්න අවශ්‍ය මොනවද ඒවට උනේ කියන එක ගැන. දෙවෙනි කාරණය ඔවුන් කියනවා මේ නැවේ තිබුණා කන්ටේනර් 87ක් ප්ලාස්ටික් පබළු. මෙන්න මේවා විශාල ප්‍රමාණයක් ගොඩබිමට ගසාගෙන ආවා. මේක ඔවුන් කියනවා ලෝකයේ මෙතෙක් සිද්ධ වෙච්ච විශාලතම ප්ලාස්ටික් අපද්‍රව්‍ය වෙරළට එකතු වීමේ අවස්ථාව කියලා. මීට පෙර එවැනි සිද්ධියක් තව රටවල් දෙක තුනක වෙලා තිබුණත් මෙතරම් විශාල ප්‍රමාණයක් මුහුදට එකතු වෙලා නැහැ. ඒ නිසා මේ පුංචි ලංකාවට බරපතල තත්යකට තමයි මුහුණ දෙන්න වෙලා තිබෙන්නේ. මේ කන්ටේනර් 87න් කොටසක් ගිනි ගන්නට ඇති, කොටසක් මුහුදට විසි වෙන්නට ඇති, කොටසක් මුහුද යට තැම්පත් වී තිබෙනවා ඇති, කොටසක් තමයි දැන් වෙරළට ගසාගෙන ඇවිල්ලා තිබෙන්නේ. ඔවුන්ගේ මතය අනුව උන් ඉදිනවා සාමාන්‍යයෙන් වෙරළට ගසාගෙන ආපු ප්‍රමාණය 40ක් පමණ වන්නට ඇති කියලා. එතන 60ක පමණ ප්‍රමාණයක් එක්කෝ තාමත් මුහුද පතුලේ තැම්පත් තිබෙනවා. එහෙම නැත්නම් ගිනිගෙන තිබෙනවා. ඒතර මුහුද යට තැම්පත් වෙලා තියෙනවා කියලා අපි විශ්වාස කරන ප්ලාස්ටික් සම්බන්ධයෙන් අපිට කරන්නේ කොහොමද කියන කාරණේ තාමත් සාකච්ඡා මට්ටමේ තියෙන්නේ. පිටරට ආධාර පව ගන්න සිද්ධ වෙයි. මේ කාරණේ කරන්න උපකරණ ආදිය අපි සතුව නැති නිසා ගිලුණු නැව මෙතනින් ඉවත් කර ගැනීම. ඉතින් මේ නැවයිත සමාගමට අපි නැවත දැනුම් දීලා තිබෙනවා. නියෝග දීලා තියෙනවා මේ නැව හැකිතාක් ඉක්මනට පිටතට ගෙනියන්නට කියලා. නමුත් ඒ සම්බන්ධයෙන් ඕන් දක්වන ප්‍රතිචාරය ගැන අපි සෑහීමට පත්වන්නේ නැහැ. ඕන් දිගින් දිගටම නිදහසට කරුණු දෙනවා මේ වෙලාවේ මේ මුහුදු රළු තත්ත්වයට වරකන් කාලේ අවසන් තුරු මේක කරන්න අමාරුයි කියලා. මේ තත්ත්වය අපිට බරපතල තත්ත්වයක්. අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා මේක සිංගප්පූරු රජය හරහා යම්කිසි බලපෑමක් මේ සමාගමට කරන්නට.
අතුරු වන්දිය හැටියට තියෙන්නේ මැයි මාසේ 20 වෙනිදා සිට ජුනි මාසේ 3 වෙනිදා දක්වා. ඒ දින සති දෙකකට පමණ කාලයේ විශේෂයෙන්ම රාජ්‍ය ආයතන හැටියට මීපා ආයතනය, නාවික හමුදාව, ගුවන් හමුදාව, වරාය අධිකාරිය ඇතුළු ඒ ආයතන වලින් දරපු වියදම් ඒ වගේම මේ කාලය තුල දීවර ජනතාවට අහිමි වෙච්ච දෛනික ආදායම් හැටියට තමයි අතුරු වන්දි මුදල හැටියට ඩොලර් මිලියන 40ක අතුරු වන්දිය තියෙන්නේ. ඊට පසු සති දෙක සඳහා අපි තවත් කොටසක් ඉදිරිපත් කළා තියෙනවා. දැල්ලාම්පන්න හානියට පත්වෙච්ච පිරිස් වෙනුවෙන් ඔවුන් සඳහා අවශ්‍ය දැල්ලාම්පන්න ලබා දීම සඳහා අමාත්‍යාංශයේ අපි මුදල් ප්‍රතිපාදන වෙන් කළා තියෙනවා. ඒ කටයුත්ත ඉදිරියට ගෙන යාම සඳහා.
In the meantime, yesterday the carcass of a turtle and another puffer fish had washed up ashore on the beach of Vennapur.
The Cabinet Subcommittee has decided not to increase the prices of LP gas. The Cabinet Subcommittee appointed to look into the revision of gas prices has convened a meeting this morning to decide on the request made by gas companies to increase the price of domestic LP gas cylinders. Minister Mahinda Amaravira said that a decision was taken by the Cabinet Subcommittee that the price of gas should not be increased at this point. Litrogas Lanka Limited and Laughs Gas plc had requested the Consumer Affairs Authority on several occasions during the past months to allow an increase in the prices of liquid petroleum gas, citing financial crises due to rising gas prices in the world market. During a meeting with the Cabinet Subcommittee last week, Litrogas Lanka Limited had reportedly proposed to hike the price of a domestic gas cylinder by 600 rupees, while Laughs Gas plc had called for a price hike by 700 rupees. A tipper truck driver has been shot dead by a police officer attached to the security detail of State Minister S. Veelendran opposite the State Minister's residence in Batticaloa. Preliminary investigations have revealed that a previous argument between the two had led to the incident.
A driver of a tipper truck has been shot dead this evening by a police constable attached to the security detail of State Minister S. Veelendran. The officer had opened fire at the truck positioned opposite the State Minister's residence in the area of Sinnaurani in Batticaloa.
A person has been shot dead at Sinnaurani in Batticaloa police area this evening at 5:10. A police constable who was providing security at the residence of State Minister S. Veelendran has shot at the person. The deceased has been identified as a driver of sand tipper, and the police constable has been arrested along with the weapon by the headquarter inspector Batticaloa, and a special team has been deployed to conduct investigation. According to the investigation, it has been revealed that there was a quarrel between the driver and the police constable 3 days ago. As a result of the incident, the murder has happened. Further investigations are underway by Batticaloa police. It has been revealed that State Minister Veelendran was not at home when the incident happened.
We will see you shortly. Don't go away. Welcome back. This is First at 9. Now, the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development said today that foreign direct investment flows to developing countries in Asia increased by 4% to $535 billion last year, reflecting resilience amid global FDI contraction. A report by the body says that FDI prospects for the region are more favorable than the global outlook, with a projected growth of 5 to 10%, thanks to resilient inter-regional value chains and strong economic growth prospects. It, however, notes that FDI inflows to Sri Lanka will take longer to recover as investment commitments remain weak.
The United Nations Conference on Trade and Development says Asia received more than half of global FDI in 2020. The World Investment Report 2021, published today by the UNCTAD, notes that growth was driven by China, Hong Kong, India and the United Arab Emirates. Elsewhere in the region, the report says that FDI contracted with economies where FDI is concentrated in tourism or manufacturing. Contractions were particularly severe. In South Asia, it says that FDI rose by 20% to $71 billion in 2020, driven mainly by a 27% rise in FDI in India to $64 billion. But FDI had fallen in other South Asian economies that rely on export-oriented garment manufacturing. The report notes that inflows in Bangladesh and Sri Lanka contracted by 11% and 43% respectively, while in Pakistan FDI was down by 6% to $2.1 billion, cushioned by continued investments in power generation and telecommunication industries. It also warns that long-term investment growth in South Asia is expected to reverse. For Sri Lanka, the report says that FDI inflows will take longer to recover as investment commitments remain weak. It says that announced greenfield investment projects in 2020, an indication of FDI trends over the next few years, contracted by minus 96% in the island. This, the report says, is due to weak investment interest in garment production, a major export industry and FDI recipient in the country. Further, investment in and production of garments suffered severely in 2020 with no sign of recovery as of early 2021, adding that in Sri Lanka, export data for January 2021 show no recovery yet.
Now, taking a look at the Colombo Bourse, Sri Lankan stocks closed 0.74% higher today, with the all-share price index gaining 11.27 points to close at 7,726.73. The S&P SL20 index of more liquid stocks, meanwhile, fell 0.64% to close at 3,063.72. Market turnover was 1.9 billion rupees, with 74 stocks gaining and 92 falling. Now, here's Dimantha Matthew with a brief report on today's market performance.
The market saw a mixed reaction today, with the ASPI gaining by 11 points, but the S&P SL20 declining by around 19 points. Even the ASPI, we saw significant volatility in the market. At the start of the day, market gaining by around 40 points during the first few minutes of trading, and then within the first hour, the overall market erasing all the gains. So afterwards, we saw a bit of volatility and then slide towards the upward trend. So with that, we finally saw the market gaining by 11 points at the end of the day. So overall turnover was less than 2 billion rupees after a week-long rise of 2 billion plus turnover. So today, even the number of transactions were slightly onto the lower side, we could say on moderate levels around the 18,000 level. So overall, comparatively over the last 1 week, the retail activity seems to be slightly lower, with today being the first day that the overall economy is being opened after the lockdown. Most investors seem to be on a wait-and-see approach.
The rupee, meanwhile, closed at 202.88 cents against the US dollar for another day after closing at the same level yesterday. Let's now take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded against other major currencies during the day. And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.